Conversation this afternoon. Nigeria's economy could be turning to a corner towards stability as new data shows GDP grew at its fastest rate in 3 years, suggesting government's rapid-fire reforms may be paying off. The economy grew by 3.4% last year, the country's Statistics Bureau says on Tuesday, a mark last reached in 2021. As Nigeria rebounded from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, growth in the final months of 2024 was the largest in at least 9 quarters, the Bureau says, driven by 5% expansion in services sector. Now, the real GDP improvements followed a push by the Bola Tinubu-led administration to calm shocks triggered by the Nigerian president's decision to end a long-standing petrol subsidy and remove a fixed peg for the naira in June 2023. Both actions escalated prices across the board, especially for food and transportation, sending businesses and multinationals scrambling for solutions to continued operations in the country. Let's talk to Mr. Ogbonna Ukuku. He's an investment analyst and economic development expert. He joins me from Ikeja here in Lagos. It's good to have you on the program. Mr. Ukuku, thank you so much for your time.
All right, thanks for having me, Tolu.
Yes, I think it's good to start with your submission or what you think about these figures. It's been positive all around, positive comments we've heard since these figures came up from the NBS. But in your own understanding and what we've seen before now, what do you make of this growth that we've seen, 3.84% for Q4 of 2024?
Okay, first things first, I will start by saying, yes, about sometime towards the end of last year, I kept on, mentioning, saying that we have actually reached where, I mean, where, what should I say, the base of all base when it comes to, going down as, the economy. Because first, what happened was when you allow the economy to function, not living in a bubble. So the reality is, the policies of government, what it did was to actually show us our real where we stand as we started growing from the base. So that has we've gotten to the barest we got to the barest minimum, so we now started growing. So this recovery is actually we or most of us who are watchers of the economy, we actually saw it coming. We knew that the economy would start growing at the rate at which it's growing, and then we would expect more because there are a few things that we still need to plug here and there, and then you will see more growth happening. So it didn't come as a shock to me, but it's just that it speaks to resilience. It speaks to because you need to also look at the character, the natural futures of inherent in the people who are being governed and those who are providing leadership. So that resilience is there, and then we have a youth population that wants to work. That if given the right platform, they will be able to do well a lot more. So that's actually what has happened, and then I'm glad that it's happening. So some of the people who used to argue with me when I say this, they can actually see that the rebound or what's happening in the economy is actually realizable and then is workable.
Well, let me ask you, because in this figure we see clearly that the services sector played a significant growth in driving growth. Now, in your observation before now, were you also expecting that the services sector was going to play a big role in driving this growth? We see that in agriculture and even the oil space, it didn't perform too very well.
Now, so these are the realities. So what happens when it comes to growing the economy? See, when you throw it out, just like when you're fishing, you throw out the nets. So the kind of fish that aggregates will show you, okay, these are the areas where I need to pay attention. So with that level of growth that you saw in service sector, especially in the financial institutions, even with the monetary policy tightening, and you saw those level of activities happening in the service sector and the financial sector, it goes to show that if you deploy similar strategy or become a bit more strategic when it comes to the real sector, like the manufacturing, the agri sector, of course, in the oil and gas sector, you will get similar results. So what we need to do is to still look at what the loopholes are, where the issues are, and then begin to work towards that. So we need to pay attention. We need to focus more on those things that will support those other sectors. So I mean, services, of course, financial sector. It goes to show that there's a lot happening. There's a lot of transactions going on within the system. So monies are going in and out of those services that are being provided around the financial sector. But moving into the manufacturing sector that didn't do so well, we need to pay more attention. We need to deploy. And then again, I always say we need to pay attention to our lifelines. Lifelines are those things that nature has given to us that we need to begin to work on to make sure they become more productive for us as a people. And then for those who are managers of the economy, they need to pay, they need to pay attention to those areas.
Also moving, let's look at agriculture now, and I would like you to speak so very much about that. We've seen a lot of efforts by government trying to improve the agricultural space. A lot of initiatives being introduced and all of that, but many will tell you that there are still issues to be addressed with regards to agriculture, either cost of seedlings, either fertilizer issues, before we talk about insecurity, which government is also trying to address head-on. But all of this, what do you think? Some say we might have to bring back initiatives like the agricultural scheme that we had before. Now, all of those former kind of schemes back again to the system before we can get to of course, the level of productivity that is expected. Do you think that we would have to get to that point before we start to become as productive as expected in Nigeria's agricultural space?
In agriculture, we need to do much more. When I say that, I say much more because I always use a very, very simple crop as an example. If Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava in the world, and then Thailand is the second largest producer of cassava in the world, Nigeria makes less than $100 million from cassava, and Thailand, that is the second largest producer of cassava, makes over $2 billion from cassava annually. So that speaks to the fact that we've not been able to do cassava the way we ought to do cassava. If you look at it critically, so it's beyond input, it's beyond having, we have arable land, but how many of the entire acreage of arable land that we have are virgin land. They are virgin land because they've not been cultivated before. So that means you've not done your stumping there. You still have, huge trees. So there's a lot of investment that needs to go into agriculture. So let's even take them one after the other. So you look at security. Yes, security is one. Our food belt is being attacked, whether it's a sabotage or whatever it is. The government, I know government is paying attention to that, but a lot needs to go in there. When it comes to extension services, so that means there has to be knowledge. Extension service about knowledge transfer. So being able to train those who have the ability to even deploy those knowledge to those who are those who are doing peasant farmers to understand what they need to do. Then we come to input. Input is so key because if you don't have the right application or if you don't have the right input and then apply wrongly, there are some kinds of fertilizer, there's a mix of fertilizer you need when it comes to cassava. I've done a whole lot of work on cassava, so sometimes I understand it very well. And then coming back to the same issue on cassava, for you to be productive when it comes to cassava, you need to have large acreage of cassava farm. One of the smallest farms, I use a country like Brazil that have done so well in cassava. One of the key things that they've done in Brazil that is not in existence here is that for you to make sense with cassava, you must have large acreage. I give you a very simple example. For you to produce 6 million liters of ethanol from cassava, you need to cultivate as much as 2,800 hectares of cassava farm with an average yield of 28 tons per hectare. And there's no single farm in Nigeria where you produce as much as 10 to 15 tons per hectare. It does not exist anywhere in Nigeria. So you need to also, you need to cultivate as much as, 2,000 hectares of cassava farm. I think the largest farm we have is in Isenyi, or so. Cassava farm is in Isenyi, and is less than 10,000 hectares. So for you to make meaningful, productive sense of cassava, you need to do large acreage of cassava farm. So it goes to show there's a lot that we need to do. Then number 4 issue is what we need to talk about: financial, creating products, financial products that is adaptable to agriculture. So we're still talking about crop production there. We've not gone to livestock. We're still sticking to crop production. So it goes beyond. So it goes around the same. The same thing happens in other crops. When you call it ginger, potatoes. Onions, so there's so much that needs to go in there. So we need to pay attention, design programs that are, product specific, that will grow this particular sector, because we need to take advantage of this young population that we have. Make agriculture very interesting, and it also has a lot to do with the manufacturing sector too, because if you don't get your agri sector to work very well, it affects the raw material supply for the manufacturing sector. So you see the manufacturing. So I know might be the next question you're going to ask me about manufacturing sector. So let me still stay with the agri sector. So there's a whole lot that we need to do. So I've talked about finances. Then again, we need to do a lot of technology transfer. Technology transfer in the sense that some of the things that we need for us to preserve, for us to cultivate properly, for us to do large farming are things that we can't manufacture locally. So these are things we need to get them out, get them from other clients, and then with the right strategy, in the sense that those technology will come with a lot of training for our people so that we understand how these things work and begin to localize them, eventually. So there's a whole lot that has to happen in the agri space so that we'll be able to become as productive.
You already picked it there, the manufacturing space. The manufacturing space. Let's talk manufacturing. There's been this back and forth with regards to what's been happening in the manufacturing space, and we are not doing so very well if we look at the PMI at the moment. And you know that sector has the opportunity to create the necessary jobs, the kind of jobs that is needed. The government cannot create all the kind of jobs that we need. So what more can be done to help stabilize our manufacturing sector? Particularly for me, I want that sector to be competitive. How can we make it competitive, looking at our power supply issues, looking at our infrastructure issues, and other issues that manufacturers have complained of in recent times? Interest rate is also there. You know how that has been hitting the real sector so hard before we even got a hold in rates in the last MPC meeting.
Okay, so you see, it comes back to the same cycle, So one, you need to look at the technology that you have. You have to look at the market. So the market is not just population. At least the market is not population. So if you have a large population with people who don't have the disposable income to actually procure or purchase what you're producing, so the population means nothing. So you need to look at the greatest denominator is actually the efficiency in the system. So the efficiency in the system is actually very key. These are they're intangible, but they are very, very robust issues that if you don't take care of them, they become an issue. I give you a very, very simple example: infrastructure. So if a manufacturer is actually, let's say, for example, based let's say at the Macmillan bus stop, and then he wants to produce goods going to Badagry. I can tell you for free that it's easier for goods coming from maybe Côte d'Ivoire to get to Badagry faster than goods moving from Ibadan here at Macmillan bus stop to Badagry. So what does that tell you? It tells you that there's so much going on when it comes to the road infrastructure, that the human bureaucratic red tapes that occur. Let's say there are people who do those non-state actors, let me use that word, those who say you must pay one ticket or the other before you pass from one local government to another. Those are things that we need to pay attention on. Then we now have to now go into the real issues. When I call the real issues are things like financial products that would also support the manufacturing sector. So for me, the DFIs are not doing well enough as far as I'm concerned. The finance institutions, they need to become a bit more robust. So a careful and a deliberate decision has to be taken on how to recapitalize Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, and then the Exim Bank. They have to be recapitalized. They must have enough funds to cushion the wealth, the amount of industrial revolution that we are looking at, being able to support. So there are a lot of factories that need support because they can't depend on commercial banks. They need to depend on those development finance. That's why they are called development finance institutions. They need to help develop the economy by providing, the kind of, financial products that will support industries. Then let me come to the real thing again. I mentioned it, raw material supply strategy. Raw material supply strategy has a big problem. Every industry in Nigeria still depend, or most industries in Nigeria still depend on raw material from other countries. That's why even the FX shock affected a lot of, the manufacturing sector. Because I say it every time, what we do here in Nigeria is actually we assemble most of those consumable, goods. We actually assemble them. We don't produce. Because tell me, is there anywhere where you have seen in Nigeria where they make extracts from plants? Because plant extracts are part of the APIs, that's active pharmaceutical ingredients that you need to produce drugs. So most of these things are gotten from outside the country. So if dollar goes up, it becomes a problem. So the manufacturing sector, so we need to have a strategic backward integration system that will help the raw material supply so that anytime you're talking about manufacturing, it becomes an end-to-end game, not just coupling or what I call assemblage. Because like I always use as an example if I'm teaching, I say if a single candy that we all put in our mouth in Nigeria is actually made up of 4 products: water, glucose syrup, coloration, and flavoring. Everything I mentioned here, only water comes from Nigeria. Every other thing comes from abroad. So if there's a problem with FX, it affects the person who is producing the candy that you leak. So it goes round, right round the manufacturer. So every manufacturer, we have to, that's where we have to pay deliberate attention, be very strategic on how to get, redesign our raw material supply. So again, there has to be that support coming from the subnationals. Subnationals in the sense that there has to be that deliberate effort by those at the subnationals to support whatever the programs of the federal government to see how they can augment and then give that support that those manufacturers need. Like getting land licenses, to get C of O, because some of them, they need some of these documents so that they can have an interface, a proper interface with the financial institutions. So there's a whole lot that needs to go in there. So like I said earlier, if the resilience we have seen with the service sector, if we pay attention and become a bit more strategic and deliberate, you will see a whole lot of growth happening within the manufacturing sector, within the agri sector, and every other, in the other components of the economy.
Investment analyst and economic development expert. Thank you for sharing your views with us on this very important topic. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Then now we'll take a break, and still to come on the show, we will shift our focus to discuss